Martha always thought the beach house would be hers forever. She remembered the first time she saw it, a small white cottage with blue shutters perched on the edge of the world waves crashing just beyond the porch. She was 23, newly married, full of hope. She and her husband painted the walls together. They planted wildflowers along the path. They built a swing for the children they dreamed of having. Years passed. The house became the heart of every summer. Martha's children grew up chasing seagulls, building sandcastles, learning to swim in the cold, salt water. She taught them how to spot dolphins at sunrise, how to listen for the hush of the tide at night. She watched them grow from toddlers to teenagers, from teenagers to adults. She watched her husband's hair turn silver. She watched her own hands grow softer and lined. When her husband died, the beach house became her anchor. She spent long evenings on the porch, wrapped in a blanket. Listening to the sea, she found comfort in the rhythm of the waves. She found peace in the memories that lingered in every room. Martha's children moved away, Claire to the city, Evan to the mountains. They visited less often, but Martha kept the house ready. She dusted the guest rooms. She baked their favorite bread. She waited for the sound of their laughter. She waited for the day they would come home. One morning in late spring, Martha was watering the wildflowers. The phone rang. It was Claire. Her voice was brisk. She said, "Mom, we need to talk. Can you sit down?" Martha wiped her hands. On her apron, she sat at the kitchen table. She listened as Claire explained. "We have decided to sell the beach house. Evan and I talked about it. It is too much for you to manage. We already found a buyer. They want to close quickly. We are coming tomorrow to help you pack." Martha's heart pounded. She tried to speak, but her voice was small. "You sold the house without asking me." Claire's tone softened. "Mom, it is for the best. You will be happier in the city. Closer to us. You do not need all this space. You do not need the worry." Martha stared at the sunlight on the floor. She felt the world tilt. She said, "I see, thank you for letting me know." Claire said, "We will be there by noon. Please do not worry. We will take care of everything." The call ended. Martha sat in silence. She looked around the kitchen. The blue tiles her husband had chosen. The chipped mug she used every morning. The window that framed the sea. She felt invisible. She felt erased. She walked through the house. She touched the walls. She ran her fingers over the old piano. She opened the closet in the guest room. Inside were boxes of toys, faded swimsuits, a kite with a broken string. She sat on the bed. She let the memories wash over her. She remembered Claire's first steps on the porch. Evan's laughter as he chased the dog through the dunes, her husband's arms around her as they watched the stars. She remembered the storms that rattled the windows, the birthdays, the anniversaries, the quiet mornings with coffee and hope. Martha stood and walked to the porch. She sat in the old wicker chair. She watched the waves. She listened to the gulls. She let the wind carry her sorrow. That night, Martha could not sleep. She wandered the house. She opened drawers. She found old letters, photographs. A seashell necklace Claire made in kindergarten. A postcard from Evan. She pressed them to her heart. She whispered, "I am still here. This is still my home." In the morning, Martha made tea. She sat at the kitchen table. She wrote a letter to herself. She wrote, "I am not ready to say goodbye. I am not ready to let go, but I do not know how to fight. I do not know how to make them see." She folded the letter. She placed it in the box with the others. She stood and looked out the window. She saw the tide coming in. She saw the sun rising over the water. She told herself, "I will not let them take my memories. I will not let them take my peace." When Claire and Evan arrived, they brought boxes and tape. They moved through the house with busy hands. They talked about logistics. They talked about the new owners. They did not ask Martha what she wanted to keep. They did not ask her how she felt. Martha watched them. She felt like a guest in her own life. She tried to speak, but her words were lost in the noise. That evening, Martha walked the shoreline. She let the cold water wash over her feet. She watched the sky turn pink and gold. She remembered her husband's voice. He used to say, "This house is more than wood and stone. It is the story of us." Martha whispered, "I am still part of this story. Even if they cannot see it." She returned to the house. She sat on the porch. She listened to the waves. She let the night settle around her. She promised herself, "I will find a way to hold on. I will find a way to be seen." As the stars appeared, Martha closed her eyes. She breathed in the salt air. She let herself hope that tomorrow would bring a new beginning. Martha woke before dawn. The house was quiet. She listened to the soft hum of the refrigerator, the gentle creak of the porch swing in the wind. She moved through the rooms in her slippers, her steps slow and careful. She touched the walls as she passed. She whispered good morning to the house. She wondered how many mornings she had left here. She made tea. She sat at the kitchen table. She watched the sky turn from gray to gold. She remembered the way her husband used to join her. He would pour his coffee, would sit across from her. He would reach for her hand. She missed the warmth of his fingers. She missed the way he would say, "We are lucky to have this place. We are lucky to have each other." Martha opened the box of letters. She read the one she wrote to herself the day before. She read old notes from her husband, from her children, birthday cards with childish handwriting, thank you notes from summers long gone. She pressed her palm to her heart. She let the memories fill her. She let the ache settle in Claire. And Evan slept late. When they woke, they moved through the house with purpose. They opened closets. They sorted through drawers. They made piles of things to keep, things to give away, things to throw out. They did not ask Martha what she wanted. They did not ask her what mattered. Martha watched them from the doorway. She wanted to speak. She wanted to say, "This is my home. These are my memories." But her voice felt small. She worried they would not listen. She worried they would call her sentimental. She worried they would say, "It is just a house. It is just stuff." She walked outside. She wandered the garden. She knelt in the dirt. She pulled weeds. She trimmed the wildflowers. She remembered planting them with her husband. She remembered teaching Claire and Evan how to dig, how to water, how to wait for the first green shoots. A neighbor stopped by. She brought a basket of muffins. She hugged Martha. She said, "I heard about the sale. I am so sorry." Martha smiled. She thanked her. She tried to sound brave. She tried to sound grateful. But her heart was heavy. The neighbor sat with her on the porch. They watched the waves. They talked about the old days. They talked about the children. They talked about the storms that had battered the house. They talked about the summers that had filled it with laughter. Martha said, "I do not know how to say goodbye." The neighbor squeezed her hand. She said, "You do not have to." Not yet, when the neighbor left. Martha sat alone. She listened to the wind. She listened to the sea. She let the silence wrap around her that afternoon. Claire and Evan argued in the kitchen. They disagreed about what to keep. They disagreed about what to give away. Their voices rose. Martha stood in the hallway. She felt like a ghost. She wondered if they remembered the way they used to play here. She wondered if they remembered the way she used to comfort them. She wondered if they remembered the way she used to hold them when they cried. She walked to her bedroom. She closed the door. She sat on the bed. She looked at the photos on the dresser, her wedding day, her children as babies, her husband's smile. She picked up a small seashell. She remembered the day Evan found it. He was 5. He ran up the beach. He shouted, "Look, Mom, I found a treasure." Martha held the shell in her hand. She whispered, "I am still here. I am still your mother. I am still the keeper of these memories." That evening, Martha made dinner. She cooked their favorite meal. She set the table with the good plates. She lit a candle. She called Claire and Evan to eat. They sat in silence. They picked at their food. They talked about the sale. They talked about the new owners. They did not talk about the past. They did not talk about the future after dinner. Martha washed the dishes. She stood at the sink. She watched the moon rise over the water. She remembered the way her husband used to stand behind her. He would dry the plates. He would hum a tune. He would kiss her cheek. She missed him. She missed the way he made the house feel full. Martha went to bed early. She lay awake. She listened to the house settle. She listened to the waves. She wondered what would happen to the house. She wondered what would happen to her. She dreamed of the beach. She dreamed of her children running through the surf. She dreamed of her husband's laughter. She woke before dawn, her pillow damp with tears. The next day, Martha walked the shoreline. She picked up stones. She watched the gulls. She let the wind tangle her hair. She thought about the years she had spent here. She thought about the love she had poured into every corner. She sat on a driftwood log. She wrote in her journal, "I am not ready to let go. I am not ready to be erased, but I do not know how to fight. I do not know how to make them see." She closed the journal. She stood. She walked back to the house. She told herself, "I will find a way. I will not let them take my peace." That evening, Martha sat on the porch. She watched the sunset. She listened to the waves. She let the silence hold her. She promised herself, "I will not give up. I will not be invisible. I will find my voice." As the stars appeared, Martha closed her eyes. She breathed in the salt air. She let herself hope that tomorrow would bring a new beginning. Martha woke to the sound of rain. It tapped gently on the roof. It slid down the windows in silver streams. She wrapped herself in a shawl. She moved through the house. She listened to the quiet. She felt the weight of the coming goodbye. But she also felt something new. Small spark. A whisper of resolve. She made tea. She sat at the kitchen table. She opened the box of letters. She read her husband's handwriting. He had always been careful with details. He kept every receipt, every deed, every contract. Martha remembered the way he used to say, "You never know when you will need proof. You never know when you will need to remember." She sifted through the papers. She found the deed to the house. She traced her name with her finger. She remembered signing it. She remembered the way her husband smiled at her. He said, "This is for you. This is your safe place." Martha kept searching. She found another envelope. It was thick. It was sealed. She opened it. Inside was a second deed. Her eyes widened. She read the words slowly. It was not just the house, it was the land. The entire stretch of shoreline, from the old pier to the rocky point, it was all in her name. Martha sat back in her chair. She let the truth settle. She owned the shore. Not just the cottage, not just the garden, but the sand, the dunes, the path to the water. She remembered the day her husband bought the land. He said, "One day this will matter. One day you will need to stand your ground." Martha felt a surge of gratitude. She felt a flicker of hope. She realized she had a choice. She could let her children take everything, or she could hold on to what mattered most. She put the deeds in a folder. She hid them in her desk. She decided to wait. She decided to watch. Claire and Evan spent the day packing. They moved through the house with busy hands. They boxed up books. They wrapped dishes in newspaper. They argued about what to keep. They did not notice Martha's quiet. They did not see the way she watched them. That afternoon, the buyers arrived. A couple from the city. They wore expensive shoes. They spoke in quick voices. They walked through the house. They pointed at the walls. They talked about renovations. They talked about tearing down the porch. They did not greet Martha. They did not ask her about the house. Martha stood in the kitchen. She listened to their plans. She felt a cold anger. She thought, You do not know this place. You do not know its story. The buyers asked Claire about beach access. Claire said, "Of course. The path is right there. You can walk to the water anytime." Martha said nothing. She watched. She waited. That evening, Claire and Evan celebrated. They opened a bottle of wine. They toasted to new beginnings. They did not invite Martha to join them. She sat on the porch. She listened to the waves. She held the folder in her lap. She whispered, "I am still here. I am still the keeper of this shore." The next morning, Martha walked the beach. She felt the sand beneath her feet. She watched the sun rise over the water. She thought about her husband. She thought about the promise he made. She thought about the years she had spent protecting this place. She returned to the house. She made breakfast. She set the table. She called Claire and Evan to eat. They talked about the move. They talked about the buyers. They did not ask Martha what she wanted after breakfast. Martha went to her room. She opened her journal. She wrote, "I have a choice. I can let them erase me, or I can stand my ground. I can let them take my memories, or I can protect what is mine." She closed the journal. She stood at the window. She watched the waves. She felt the strength of the tide. She felt the strength in her own heart. That afternoon, the buyers returned. They brought a lawyer. They brought papers to sign. They smiled at Claire and Evan. They ignored Martha. The lawyer asked about the land. He asked about the boundaries, asked about the deed. Claire said, "It is all in order. The house, the garden, the beach." Martha stepped forward. She said, "May I see the papers?" The lawyer handed them to her. Martha read them carefully. She pointed to the map. She said, "This line is not correct. The land from the pier to the point is not included." The lawyer frowned. He asked for proof. Martha went to her desk. She brought the folder. She laid the deeds on the table. She said, "This land is mine. It has always been mine." The room fell silent. Claire stared at her Evan, looked confused. The buyers whispered to each other. The lawyer read the deeds. He nodded. He said, "The sale cannot go through without the land." The buyers were angry. They said, "We want the beach. We want the view. We want the access." Martha stood tall. She said, House is just a house without the shore. The shore is my legacy. The shore is my promise." Claire and Evan argued. They pleaded with Martha. They said, "Why did you not tell us? Why did you keep this secret?" Martha said, "You did not ask. You did not listen. You did not see me." The buyers left. The lawyer packed his papers. The house was quiet again. That night, Martha sat on the porch. She listened to the waves. She felt the power of her choice. She wrote in her journal, "Today I remembered my strength. Today I protected my story. Today I stood my ground." She closed the journal. She looked at the stars. She whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for giving me the courage to hold on." As the night deepened, Martha felt a peace she had not known in years. She knew the fight was not over, but she knew she was not alone. She knew she was still the keeper of the shore. Martha woke to the sound of gulls. The sky was clear and blue. The air smelled of salt and wildflowers. She stood on the porch. She watched the waves roll in. She felt the world shift. She felt the weight of the past few days. But she also felt something lighter. Sense of possibility. A sense of power. The house was quiet. Claire and Evan slept. Late Martha moved through the rooms. She opened the windows. She let the sea breeze fill the house. She made coffee. She sat at the kitchen table. She listened to the gentle creak of the old floorboards. She thought about the years she had spent here. She thought about the memories she had made. She thought about the future she wanted to protect. Later that morning, Claire came into the kitchen. Her eyes were tired. She poured herself a cup of coffee. She sat across from Martha. She said, "I do not understand. Why did you keep the land a secret? Why did you not tell us?" Martha looked at her daughter. She saw the worry in her eyes. She saw the fear. She said, I did not keep it a secret. I just never thought you would sell the house without asking me. I never thought you would forget what this place means. Claire looked down. She said, we thought we were helping. We thought you were lonely here. We thought you needed a change. Martha reached across the table. She took Claire's hand. She said, I am not lonely. I am not helpless. This house is my home. This shore is my heart. I wish you had asked. I wish you had listened. Evan joined them. He sat quietly. He listened to his mother and sister. He said, I am sorry, Mom. I did not think. I just wanted to make things easier. Martha nodded. She said, I know you meant well. But sometimes meaning well is not enough. Sometimes you have to see the person in front of you, not just the problem you want to solve. The day passed slowly. The buyers did not return. The phone did not ring. Martha spent the afternoon in the garden. She pulled weeds. She watered the wildflowers. She felt the earth in her hands. She felt the sun on her face. Claire and Evan packed their things. They moved through the house with less urgency. They stopped to look at old photos. They found a box of seashells. They found a faded map of the shoreline. They sat on the porch with Martha. They listened to her stories. They remembered the summers they spent here. They remembered the way their father used to sing. They remembered the way their mother used to hold them close. That evening, Martha made dinner. She cooked their favorite meal. She set the table with the good plates. She lit a candle. She called Claire and Evan to eat. They sat together. They talked about the past. They talked about the future. They talked about what it means to belong after dinner. They walked the beach. The sky was painted with pink and gold. The tide was low. The sand was cool beneath their feet. Martha pointed to the old pier. She told them about the day she and their father bought the land. She told them about the promise they made to protect this place, to keep it safe for the family, to honor the memories that lived here. Claire and Evan listened. They asked questions. They shared their own memories. They laughed about the time Evan tried to build a raft. They remembered the storm that knocked out the power. They remembered the way the house glowed with candlelight. Martha felt the distance between them shrink. She felt the old wounds begin to heal. She felt the love that had always been there, even when it was hidden by fear or pride. That night, Martha sat on the porch. She watched the stars. She listened to the waves. She wrote in her journal today, I saw my children today. I heard their hearts today. I remembered that love is not about control. It is about trust. It is about forgiveness. The next morning, the buyers returned. They were angry. They demanded access to the beach. They threatened legal action. Martha stood on the porch, held the deeds in her hand. She spoke calmly. She said, this land is mine. This shore is my legacy. You cannot take what does not belong to you. The buyers argued. They waved their papers. They called their lawyer. Martha stood her ground. She did not raise her voice. She did not back down. Claire and Evan watched. They saw their mother's strength. They saw the way she protected the house. They saw the way she protected them. The buyers left. Their threats empty. Their plans undone. Martha turned to her children. Said, this is our home, but it is also my home. I will not be erased. I will not be forgotten. Claire hugged her mother. She said, I am sorry. I did not understand. I do now. Evan nodded. He said, we should have listened. We should have asked. Martha smiled. She said, it is not too late. We can start again. That evening, they sat on the porch. They watched the sunset. They listened to the waves. They talked about the future. They talked about what it means to be a family. Martha felt a peace she had not known in years. She knew there would be challenges ahead. She knew there would be hard conversations, but she also knew she was not alone. She knew she was still the keeper of the shore. As the stars appeared, Martha closed her eyes. She breathed in the salt air. She let herself hope that tomorrow would bring a new beginning. The days after the confrontation with the buyers felt different. The house was quieter. The air was lighter. Martha moved through her routines with a new sense of calm. She made her tea in the morning. She watched the sun rise over the water. She listened to the gulls. She felt the peace that comes from standing your ground. Claire and Evan stayed a few more days. They helped Martha with small repairs. They painted the porch railings. They fixed the loose step by the garden gate. They worked together in silence, but it was a comfortable silence. A silence filled with understanding, a silence that said, "We are here." We are learning. One afternoon, Martha found Claire sitting on the porch. She was looking at an old photo album. She turned the pages slowly. She traced her finger over the pictures. She said, "I forgot how happy we were here. I forgot how much this place means." Martha sat beside her. She said, "It is easy to forget. Life moves fast. We get busy. We think we know what is best. But sometimes we need to slow down. We need to remember." Claire nodded. She said, "I am sorry, Mom. I should have listened. I should have asked." Martha squeezed her daughter's hand. She said, "You are listening now. That is what matters." Evan joined them. He brought lemonade. He sat on the steps. He said, "I talked to the buyers. They are not coming back. They realize they cannot have the beach. They realize they cannot have what is not theirs." Martha smiled. She said, "Some things cannot be bought. Some things must be earned." That evening they made dinner together. They cooked Martha's favorite recipes. They set the table on the porch. They ate as the sun set. They shared stories. They laughed about old times. They remembered the way their father used to sing. They remembered the way the house glowed with candlelight during storms. After dinner, they walked the beach. The tide was low. The sand was cool. They picked up shells. They watched the stars appear. They talked about the future. They talked about what it means to be a family. Martha felt the distance between them shrink. She felt the old wounds begin to heal. She felt the love that had always been there, even when it was hidden by fear or pride. The next morning, Claire and Evan packed their bags. They hugged Martha. They promised to visit soon. They promised to call more often. They promised to listen. Martha watched them drive away. She stood on the porch. She waved until their car disappeared down the road. She felt a mix of sadness and hope. She knew they would return. She knew they had learned something important. The house was quiet again, but it was not empty. It was filled with memories. It was filled with love. Martha spent the afternoon in the garden. She pulled weeds. She watered the wildflowers. She thought about the years she had spent here. She thought about the love she had poured into every corner. A neighbor stopped by. She brought fresh bread. She hugged Martha. She said, "I heard what happened. You are brave. You are strong." Martha smiled. She said, "I am just a mother. I am just someone who loves this place." The neighbor sat with her on the porch. They watched the waves. They talked about the old days. They talked about the future. That evening, Martha sat by the window. She watched the moon rise over the water. She opened her journal. She wrote, "Today, I saw my children. Today, I heard their hearts. Today, I remembered." That love is not about control. It is about trust. It is about forgiveness. She closed the journal. She looked at the stars. She whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for giving me the courage to hold on." As the night deepened, Martha felt a peace she had not known. In years, she knew the fight was not over, but she knew she was not alone. She knew she was still the keeper of the shore. The next day, Martha received a letter. It was from Claire and Evan. They wrote, "Thank you for teaching us. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for protecting our home." Martha pressed the letter to her heart. She felt the warmth of their words. She felt the strength of their love. She walked the beach at sunset. She listened to the waves. She let the wind carry her worries away. She knew she had done the right thing. She knew she had honored her husband's promise. She knew she had protected her legacy. As the stars appeared, Martha closed her eyes. She breathed in the salt air. She let herself hope that tomorrow would bring a new beginning. Martha woke to the sound of rain on the roof. The world outside was gray and soft. She wrapped herself in a shawl. She made tea. She sat at the kitchen table, listened to the gentle patter. She felt the quiet strength that had grown inside her. She knew she had done what was right. She knew she had protected her home. A week passed. Claire and Evan called every day. They asked about the house. They asked about the garden. They asked about Martha. Their voices were warmer. Their words were softer. They wanted to know how she was. They wanted to know what she needed. One morning, Claire called with a question. "Now," said Mom, "would you like to have a family gathering at the beach house? Would you like to invite everyone?" Martha smiled. She said, "Yes, I would like that very much." They made plans. They called cousins and aunts and uncles. They invited neighbors. They sent out invitations. They asked Martha what she wanted to serve. They asked her what music she wanted to play. They asked her what memories she wanted to share. Martha felt a sense of justice, not the justice of revenge, but the justice of being seen, the justice of being valued, the justice of being loved. The day of the gathering arrived. The house was filled with voices. Children ran through the halls. Laughter echoed from the porch. The kitchen was warm with the smell of bread and soup. Martha moved through the rooms. She greeted each guest. She listened to their stories. She shared her own. Claire and Evan stood by her side. They introduced her to friends. They told everyone, "This is our mother. She is the heart of this home. She is the reason we are here." Martha felt the truth of their words. She felt the pride in their voices. She felt the love in their eyes. After dinner, Claire stood and raised a glass. She said, "I want to thank my mother. Want to thank her for her strength, for her patience, for her love, for teaching us what it means to belong." Evan added, "Tried to do what we thought was best, but we forgot to listen. We forgot to ask. We forgot to see the person who made this house a home." Martha's eyes filled with tears. She said, "Thank you. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for loving me." The guests applauded. The children hugged. Martha, the neighbors smiled. The house glowed with warmth. Later that night, Martha sat on the porch. She listened to the waves. She watched the lantern sway in the breeze. She felt the peace that comes from being understood. She felt the joy that comes from being surrounded by love. Claire and Evan joined her. They sat in silence. They watched the stars. They held her hands. They said, "We are sorry. We are grateful. We are proud to be your children." Martha squeezed their hands. She said, "I forgive you. I love you. I am proud of you too." The night was quiet. The world was still. Martha felt the justice of a heart restored. She felt the justice of a family reunited. She wrote in her journal, "Today I was seen. Today I was heard. Today I was loved." She closed the journal. She looked at the stars. She whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for giving me the courage to hold on." As the night deepened, Martha felt a peace she had not known in years. She knew the journey was not over, but she knew she was not alone. She knew she was still the keeper of the shore. Martha woke to the sound of gentle waves. The morning sun painted the walls with gold. She stretched in her bed. She listened to the quiet. She felt the peace that had settled in her heart. She knew this day was a gift. She knew every day was a chance to begin again. She moved through the house. She opened the windows. She let the sea breeze fill every room. She made tea. She sat at the kitchen table. She watched the light dance on the surface of her cup. She thought about the journey she had taken. She thought about the pain. She thought about the healing. Claire called that morning. Her voice was bright. She said, "Mom, can we come for the weekend? Can we bring the children?" Martha smiled. She said, "Of course, the house is always open. The shore is always waiting." Evan called. "Too," he said. "I want to help in the garden. I want to fix the old swing. I want to spend time with you." Martha felt her heart swell. She knew her family was coming home. Not just to the house, but to her. To the love she had always offered, to the peace she had always kept. The weekend arrived. The house was filled with laughter. Children ran through the halls. They played on the porch. They chased each other on the sand. Claire and Evan cooked with Martha. They shared stories. They remembered the old days. They dreamed about the future. One afternoon, Martha took her grandchildren for a walk along the shore. She showed them where the wildflowers grew. She told them about the dolphins she used to watch with their grandfather. She taught them how to listen for the hush of the tide. She watched their faces light up with wonder. She felt the circle of life complete itself. That evening, they built a fire on the beach. They roasted marshmallows. They sang songs. They watched the stars appear. Martha sat with her family. She listened to their voices. She felt the warmth of their love. Claire sat beside her. She said, "Mom, thank you for forgiving us. Thank you for teaching us. Thank you for holding on." Martha put her arm around her daughter. She said, "Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It is about letting go. It is about choosing. Love, it is about starting again." Evan joined them. He said, "We are lucky to have you. We are lucky to have this place. We will never take it for granted." Again. Martha smiled. She looked at the fire. She looked at the faces. She loved. She knew she had done what was right. She knew she had honored her husband's promise. She knew she had protected her legacy. Later that night, Martha sat on the porch. She listened to the waves. She watched the lanterns sway in the breeze. She opened her journal. She wrote, "Today, I saw grace today. I felt peace today. I remembered that love is the only thing that lasts." She closed the journal. She looked at the stars. She whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for giving me the courage to hold on as the night deepened." Martha felt a gentle joy. She knew the journey was not over, but she knew she was not alone. She knew she was still the keeper of the shore. The next morning, Martha watched her family pack their bags. She hugged each grandchild. She kissed Claire, and Evan. She said, "Come back soon. The house will be waiting. The shore will be waiting. My heart will be waiting." They promised to return. They promised to call. They promised to listen. Martha stood on the porch. She watched them drive away. She felt a mix of sadness and hope. She knew they would return. She knew they had learned something important. The house was quiet again, but it was not empty. It was filled with memories. It was filled with love. Martha walked the beach at sunset. She listened to the waves. She let the wind carry her worries away. She knew she had done the right thing. She knew she had honored her husband's promise. She knew she had protected her legacy. As the stars appeared, Martha closed her eyes. She breathed in the salt air. She let herself hope that tomorrow would bring a new beginning. If this story touched your heart, follow and subscribe to Kindred Echo, where every heartbreak finds its voice and every lesson blooms again.